Hey, welcome to the biggest show we've ever done from Las Vegas to London. We are going global today, and for good reason. The football season is ramping up, and so are we. Beat the Odds starts right now.
From our Las Vegas studios, this is Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from Las Vegas. I'm Dave Hall.
And I'm Mariah Janos. It's now week 5 of the pro football season. This is our commitment to you. If football's going to London, so are we.
Shockingly, Fat Jack was allowed back in the country. It was a little touch and go for a while.
Yeah. So here's Jack in London, skipping to his own beat, quite literally.
Hey, Beat the Odds. It's a Fat Jack, and we're in London, and there's nothing quite like pro football over the pond. Come on, let's go have some fun.
I mean, we all know he's skipping to a pub, right? Coming up on today's show, Teddy and Jack have their favorite Week 5 betting trends, plus the boys look to stay hot with their best bets.
We'll also be taking a deeper dive into how teams fare when playing across the pond, and Brandon Marshall's back to spill the tea on whether or not halftime locker room speeches actually have an impact. I'll be back shortly. Dave, over to you.
All right, thanks, Mariah. With Jack in London, it's Teddy and I holding down the desk right now. Should we go skipping around the studio?
I'm thinking it might make a good visual, but I never want to see Jack.
Producers are saying, no, we're not going to do that.
Ixnay on the skip it.
Yeah. All right, we got to start with Jack in London, though, where somehow he tries to make the connection of pro football and Boy George. Jack.
Hey, so I think the shocking things from last week that really got me were really the struggles of Joe Burrows in Cincinnati. It's a team really going the wrong direction fast. Burrows only averaging about 180 yards a game, only completing about 58% of his passes. And honestly, if they struggle at Arizona, I could see them hanging it up with him for the year. I mean, that would be really, really early, but they are going nowhere fast. That's certainly a big shocker. The other thing was right behind me here at Wembley Stadium last week. We had 87,000 people watching Jacksonville and Atlanta. That is literally like Boy George coming over and filling out the Madison Square Garden. I mean, you're getting a musical act from the area, but you're not getting an A-plus game. This week, much, much better as Jacksonville plays host to Buffalo over at Tottenham Stadium. The key is staying out in front of the curve, though. Can we find some of these teams that have been underachieving that will continue to do so? Teams like Pittsburgh, bottom 5 in offense and defense so far this year. Also, the Bolts from L.A. They are a team that even though they had started the year 50 points, no turnovers through 2 games, the only team to ever be 0-2 with that number, just because they beat Las Vegas, let's not put them on the right path just yet. Those are teams I think if we stay out in front of the curve, we might be able to take advantage of them continuing to underachieve based on just the makeup of their team and the fact the market probably hasn't caught up just yet.
All right, thank you, Jack. We'll get back to London in a little bit. Teddy, I know you also circling some bad beats that probably left a lot of people a little raw.
Oh, yeah, some ugly ones last week, like there are almost every week in pro football. Let's start with Chicago and Denver. Chicago up 28-7 versus the worst defense in the league that has allowed 17 touchdowns without a single field goal attempt. What could go wrong? Everything in the second half. Denver with a push at -3 against Chicago. Tough if you had the team that was up at halftime in that one. What about Carolina? They're up +4.5. They're up 13-7. They're driving third quarter. Oops. A Bryce Young fumble 6. And then 15-play drive, 11-play drive to close the game. They get 0 points on both of them. Arizona stood toe-to-toe with San Fran right in the game. They have 2 chances at the end. Drop touchdown. Arizona comes up short against the spread.
You didn't even mention the Mahomes slide that I know cost a lot of people out there some money. Well, let's talk about some of the rookie quarterbacks. It's been a rough go for some of them so far.
Sure. And look, we've seen the rookie QBs struggling against the spread so far. Last week, only one of them, C.J. Stroud for Houston, was able to cover the number. The rest of them, Richardson in Indy, Bryce Young in Carolina, Aiden O'Connell for Las Vegas, and DTR in Cleveland, all failed to cover the number, and none of them look very good.
Is that something that normally picks up throughout the season as they get a little more games under their belt?
So one of the simplest long-term positive expectation strategies you can find is bet against rookie quarterbacks. Wow. They get better in their second year, not so much in their first.
C.J. Stroud, though, he has looked good. Maybe not betting-wise, but on the field, he's looked really good so far.
Real good the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Teddy. We're going to go from London to a Las Vegas sports book. Mariah Janos joins us from the Superbook Westgate Las Vegas with what they're talking about this week.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here with EVP of Superbook Operations, Mr. Jay Cornegay. We are somehow already on to week 5, but I want to go back to week 4 really quick and just talk about how you guys did, especially with that Sunday night craziness.
Yeah, it was crazy. We had a lot of mixture of results. We had enough favorites. We had some underdogs cover, which is really normally good for the operator. And when you get that Sunday night game and you don't have that favorite covering, it's usually very good for the books, and that's exactly what happened.
Now, there is another international game this week. What kind of factors go into setting those lines for international games versus games here in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, actually. We just treat it as a neutral field, which it is, and we take away that 2.5 benefit that usually goes to the home team. In this case, Buffalo is minus 5.5 on a neutral field. If they were at home, they'd be somewhere between a 7.5 and 8 point favorite. That's why you see that they're a 5.5 point favorite, over Jacksonville in London.
Now, at this point of the season, trends start to even out a bit, but what kind of advice do you maybe have for people that look at trends ahead of placing wagers?
Trends are something that you have to use with caution because you never know when they're going to start, when they're going to end. Something can go 7-2 in the first 9 weeks, but the next 9 weeks it go 2-7. Caution in the air because you never know when that's going to change.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. Dave, we'll send it back to you in studio.
All right, thanks, you two. Up next, we're going to head back out to London, where for some reason Jack is riding a bug. And as Josh McDaniels lost that Las Vegas locker room, the boys have circled some games you might like this week.
Before we head to break, with 6 sacks in week 4, LA's Khalil Mack came up just 1 sack shy of tying the league's single-game sack record against Las Vegas. But who currently holds that record? The answer after the break.
Beat the Odds is sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you which former player currently holds the league's single-game sack record. The answer, Kansas City's Derek Thomas, who set the record back in November of 1990 when he had 7 sacks against Seattle.
So as a jockey, you could ride this crazy bug. So this would be a definite dream that I might have where I was riding the bug while other bugs were trying to attack me. So, the least you can, I might fall off. Oh, that's not where you want it. That's not where you need it for sure.
He's not going to be invited back, Brandon. What are you doing, Jack? Well, this man, you always have an open invitation. Former champ with Denver, Brandon Marshall, joining us once again. All right, well, let's start with your former team. After giving up 70 to Miami, it wasn't looking good against Chicago either, but then, I don't know, did they hit a switch? Can Denver turn this thing around?
Something happened. Clearly whatever speech they had in the locker room at halftime, it clearly worked, right? Justin Fields, I want to say he went 14 for 14, had 3 touchdowns, and it made Denver's defense looked like it was, should have been playing.
Here we go again.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we go again. But in the second half, something happened. A switch came, and hopefully, that could be, the thing that sparks their season, and maybe something can happen after that.
All right. Well, we will see. Speaking of halftime speeches, do those actually work? Because you guys only get, 12 minutes for halftime?
Yeah. They work sometimes, and sometimes they don't work, right?
Okay.
More than likely, adjustments work, right? So halftime speech, of course, the rah-rah, we can say all that all we want, but adjustments are what really works. So whatever adjustments they made, and, Chicago couldn't do anything in the second half. So whatever adjustments they made, they need to continue down that path, and it'll give us a chance.
Who's the best coach that you've been with who gave the best pregame, halftime, whatever speeches, really got you guys fired up?
Oh, man, I like John Fox. John Fox, he was a guy of, you just loved him. You just loved him because he was really passionate, and he was really genuine in his words and his care for his team, right? So every time John spoke, we just wanted to run through a brick wall for him. All
right. Well, you got to love hearing that. Hey, real quick, I know one game you're really looking forward to, as are many people, San Francisco and Dallas. What are you going to be looking for in that game?
Oh, Oh, defense. Defense. Dallas. Look, they've been getting turnovers. They've been scoring on defense. San Francisco has been, dominant on defense. They're historically dominant on defense. But we'll see how Dallas handles Christian McCaffrey as well. Christian McCaffrey is their Swiss Army knife, right? He does everything for that team. So we'll see what Dallas's adjustments are for Christian and Brandon Ayuk and how they decide to use those guys.
Yeah, two great defenses going at it, and a rematch of the playoff game last year. That is going to be a good win. All right, Brandon Marshall, as always, thank you, sir. I think London police pried Jack off that weird bug thing so we can once again talk some football. Here's Jack with some betting trends to look out for.
Hey guys, so each and every week we're finding teams that are good but have flaws playing much better teams and they're being exposed. And I think we're going to get a little bit of that this week also. Last week we saw Dallas. They play host to New England. New England people thought might be heading the right way. Saw what ended up happening to them. Also, New York G-Men, they end up getting exposed by Seattle, a more well-rounded, balanced team with a good quarterback. We get a couple of those spots this week. We talked about Pittsburgh earlier. Pittsburgh is the bottom 5 offense and defense. I know Tomlin is really good against the spread as an underdog, but right now they are struggling, also have some quarterback injuries. Baltimore's covered 6 of their last 7 games. This is a team going the right direction. I have them winning it all at the end of the year. I don't think they're going to lose much this year. I think this is business as usual. I think they cover the number pretty easy. The other one, I saw some things last week with this Jacksonville team that caused me to pause. Jacksonville had absolutely receivers running wide open in the secondary. I'm not sure what's going on with Lawrence, but he has absolutely been neutered a little bit to the point he is not seeing open receivers, maybe too much information trying to get in, but he is not comfortable right now. You need to be comfortable when you're playing Buffalo. They will get pressure with their front 4. They're going to get to the quarterback. He had better find open receivers. I don't think he's going to. Give me Buffalo. I think they come over here, and even with the time change, Jacksonville stayed over here from last week. I think Buffalo's the right side of this game. So just a couple to get you going. Look for these really good, well-rounded teams with good quarterbacks to expose some of these teams that we're a little bit shaky on, especially when they step up and play better competition.
All right, thank you, Jack. In London, we've officially hit week 5, which means we start seeing teams on bye. And I know you've run some numbers on how that can affect betting numbers.
Absolutely. Bye weeks are important. And most of the time you hear about bye weeks here, this team's coming off a bye, that team's coming off a bye, they're rested and ready. I want to talk about teams before their bye week because that's where the money is to be made. Look at the numbers right on the screen. It's going to show you home favorites before the bye. These are all since 2015 when the extra point got pushed back, what I consider the most modern era of professional football. And home favorites before the bye, 65% against the spread. Blindly, just betting them blindly, 48, 26, and 1. Home dogs before the bye, 64% betting them blindly. Since 2015, 27, 15, and 1 ATS. Road favorites, the better team before the bye, 58% since 2015, 22, 16, and 1. The only subset that's not profitable, road dogs before the bye, and they're 50-50. They haven't cost you a bunch, but they're clearly not the best subset in this group. Teams before the bye, worth paying attention to.
So even if you just blindly bet on all these teams before they go on a bye, you're going to cash 65% of the time based on previous numbers.
Again, we all know those disclaimers. History does not always repeat.
Of course.
But the long-term trends have been betting on the teams before the bye, in particular, home teams and road favorites.
I love when you and Jack can argue a little bit, but since he's in London, you can't do that, at least in person. He talked a lot about Baltimore right there, saying that he thinks they're really hitting their stride. Do you agree? Are you seeing the same things Jack is?
Certainly, Baltimore looked great last week. They beat my best bet last week. That being said, they were going up against a backup quarterback who was not ready.
Okay.
And were able to dominate. I think they're good.
Right.
I don't know they're winning.
You're not quite ready to dive in as deep as Jack is in on that one.
Sure.
All right. Well, hey, it's a good thing Teddy and Jack are separated by 5,000 miles right now because up next, they're going to debate. Will Anthony Richardson score a touchdown for Indy this week? Our player prop showdown is next.
Before we take another timeout, with a 48-20 win over Miami, Buffalo won its 3rd straight game by at least 28 points. That's 1 game shy of tying the league record. Which team holds the record with 4? The answer after the break.
You're watching Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook Westgate, Las Vegas.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you which team holds the record for most consecutive games won by at least 28 points. The answer, Chicago. They won 4 straight games by at least 28 points all the way back in 1942. I was going to say it can't be recently. All right, with our Fat Jack being across the pond, it had me inspired. This may be the first time Jack has actually inspired anyone, but I digress. With games being played in London since 2007, I wanted to take a look at some of the betting trends that have come with them. Now, I know there have been games in Germany and Mexico City, but London provides the largest sample size for us to really crunch the numbers here. With the most recent win by Jacksonville over Atlanta in Wembley Stadium, favorites have a 19-10-1 record winning outright. As for how the favorites do against the spread, just above 50% with a 16-15 record. The total pretty even as well, with the over hitting 51.6% of the time. But looking at all the numbers, what jumps out at me the most, the amount of times Jacksonville has played in London. 11 times over the span of 15 years, which includes the 2 this season. There have been theories as to why, like the shaky attendance records and sparse success historically, but Jacksonville has seemed to right the ship in recent years. But another reason, which makes more sense, Jacksonville's owner, Shahid Khan, actually owns an English soccer club, Fulham. So a little cross promotion for Jacksonville ownership. We'd love to see it. Jacksonville now 5-5 straight up and 5-5 against the spread in the 10 contests in London so far. So we'll see if their success continues in the UK this weekend against Buffalo, with Josh Allen and the boys favored by 5.5 points.
Well, 5,000 miles separate these two, and it's a good thing because it's time for our player prop showdown. Teddy, will Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson score a touchdown this week? Hold tight. Jack is going to lead us off from London.
All right, so Anthony Richardson to not score a touchdown this week. I think it's a pretty easy one, honestly. Somebody needs to tell Anthony Richardson he is not still in college. This dude is running around like he's Superman without a cape. He's not getting it done athletically, and he's taking a lot of unnecessary hits. I see a bunch of ways that he does not score this weekend against that Tennessee defense. I only see 1 or 2 that he does score. He could get injured. They could not get in the red zone. There's a lot of different ways that they could not get it done, and he could not get across the goal line to score. No touchdowns by Anthony Richardson this week. I would take him not to score next week either. He may not be playing. He is a minute-to-minute type quarterback at this point.
Oh, Jack, minute-to-minute type quarterback. Anthony Richardson has been pretty darn good for Indy so far this season. Anytime touchdown score this week, I'll take the yes. You get a plus price on that. I saw plus 110 on my way into the studio today. Richardson this season, more touchdown runs for than touchdown passes. So that's meaningful. He's getting his goal line opportunities with his feet. And yes, it's Richardson, not Moss, who's getting the goal line carries for Indy. So he's getting the chances to get into the end zone. Tennessee, elite run defense, no question. But what does that mean? Quarterback scrambles. He's got an opportunity to break one against this defense. And last but not least, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Richardson, touchdown in each of his 3 games as a pro. I think he does it again this week.
Yeah, and this little showdown between you two hasn't been much of a showdown. Teddy's been on the right side every week.
That said, I'll give Jack credit for best bets because Jack's won every best bet this season, which I have not done.
And we're going to get to that in actually up next. That's a good segue, Teddy. You should just read this tease. Jack is 4-0 with his best bets this year. Can he go 5-0? See who he likes this weekend next.
Before we take our final timeout, with 4 touchdowns in Week 4, San Fran's Christian McCaffrey broke the team's record for most consecutive games with a touchdown, with 13. Whose record did he break? Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you, before Christian McCaffrey, who previously held San Francisco's team record for most consecutive games with a touchdown. The answer, Jerry Rice. He scored in 12 consecutive games, but McCaffrey has now stolen that record with 13.
All right, welcome back inside our Las Vegas football cave. Before we get to best bets, a quick note about next week's show. Assuming he clears customs, Jack should be back, and we'll get you ready for Week 6. Already Week 6. That's crazy.
It's been wild. The boys have been red hot with their best bets, including Jack, who's a perfect 4-0. So let's start with the big guy in London.
All right, so top pick time. I'm undefeated on these so far this year. That's good. We'll see if we can keep it going this week. Let's look under the total with Houston and Atlanta. Saw this Atlanta team last week. Bijan Robinson, really their only weapon. Quarterback, he looks totally uncomfortable not getting the ball down the field. They're going to go with a conservative game plan, get the ball to Robinson, try to win time of possession. Also, 8 of the last 9 Atlanta games have gone under the total. This is not a team scoring very much. Give me under with Houston and Atlanta. Better game to wager on than it probably is to watch, but we're going to try to turn some profit there.
Always hard to follow a man in a hat like that, but Teddy, you're going to have to do it. How about you?
No hat whatsoever. Let's talk San Fran and Dallas.
Oh.
Huge game, obviously, but I think there's a real edge here for San Fran. Dallas has got red zone struggles, big time. 4 touchdowns their last 15 red zone trips. We've seen Dak Prescott against quality defenses before. It's not a bet-on scenario, including this defense before. It hasn't been a bet-on scenario. San Fran is my #1 power-rated team. They're at home, and they're 67% scoring touchdowns in the red zone. They've scored 30-plus in every game. I think San Fran gets it done.
This isn't one of your best bets, but one of the big talking points here in Las Vegas is, has Josh McDaniels lost the Las Vegas locker room?
I don't like the quotes I'm reading at all. And it's surely worth noting Green Bay falls into that system of betting on teams before the bye week. They have the bye next week. Green Bay road favorites here.
All right, well, I guess I'm told we have to end the show by going back out to Jack because he went on some sort of foodie tour.
Oh, dear.
Fat Jack beat the odds, goes to London. Come on.
Look at him go. I wish I was there with him.
I think he hit them all.
I honestly miss him. Didn't think.